She stepped into the room and instantly felt invisible. Her gray linen dress, worn cardigan, and simple flats drew sneers from every corner. The room was packed with polished airs, their smiles sharp and fake. A man wearing a flashy gold tie laughed first. "Is that the cleaning lady?" A young woman leaned over to whisper loudly to her friend, probably some desperate ex looking for a handout. Ivy Clark stood quietly in the back. She didn't respond, didn't even flinch. She just adjusted the strap of her cloth bag. To everyone in that room, she was nobody, an outsider who'd wandered into a space meant for family, legacy, and money. But they had it all wrong. The woman they were mocking was actually the legal wife of the man whose fortune they'd all come to claim. And this will reading, she'd helped plan every detail of it. The Thorne estate sat on top of a wooded hill, all stone walls and iron gates keeping the world out. Inside, the grand hall smelled like old money, polished wood, leather, and expensive roses. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead like frozen waterfalls, throwing light across the crowd of 42 people. Relatives, investors, advisors, assistants, all dressed to impress, all ready to grab their piece of Logan Thorne's empire. Designer suits, silk dresses, diamonds, catching the light with every movement. They stood around sipping champagne, offering condolences that sounded rehearsed. Ivy slipped in quietly, her flats making no sound on the marble floor. She picked a spot in the back corner near a tall window that looked out over misty hills. Her dress was simple and comfortable, the gray fabric soft from years of wear. Her pale blue cardigan hung slightly off one shoulder, clearly old but clean. Her dark hair was pulled into a low bun with a few loose strands framing her face. She wore no makeup. She didn't need it. High cheekbones, hazel eyes that noticed everything, and lips that stayed closed when others would have snapped back. At 36, Ivy was beautiful in a quiet way, the kind that stays with you. The man in the gold tie, Preston Thorne, Logan's second cousin, leaned against a mahogany table. His Rolex caught the light as he smirked. Seriously, who let the help in? His voice was deliberately loud, drawing laughs from nearby cousins. A woman in a crimson dress, Marissa, Preston's sister, tossed her hair and added, "Maybe she's here to dust the paperwork before we read it." More laughter, sharp and brittle. Across the room, a younger woman named Clara, a niece with a tech startup and TikTok following, nudged her friend, Elise. "Bet she's one of his charity cases," Clara said loud enough for Ivy to hear. "Or maybe a mistress he forgot about. Look at that bag, like she packed her lunch." Elise laughed, discreetly pulling out her phone to snap a photo. "This is going straight to my story. Hashtag Thorne will flop." Clara's fingers flew across her phone as she uploaded the photo she'd just taken of Ivy. Found Logan's charity case crashing the wheel reading. "Guess she thinks thrift store style gets you billions," she announced, making sure Ivy could hear. The group around her laughed, pulling out their own phones to like and share. Comments started flooding in immediately. Strangers calling Ivy a nobody, desperate, a fraud. The digital mockery echoed the room's contempt. Ivy stood completely still, her hazel eyes briefly catching the glow of Clara's screen, but she said nothing. Her silence seemed to make them bolder, like her composure was something they needed to break. Elise leaned in, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Poor thing doesn't even know she's a meme now." The laughter grew louder, turning Ivy into something less than human. Her dignity, just another thing to mock. Ivy's fingers briefly tightened on her cloth bag, plain and handmade, without a single logo. She didn't look at Clara or Elise, didn't acknowledge Preston's comments or Marissa's insults. She just stood there, breathing evenly, her gaze fixed on the empty chair where the lawyer would sit. To them, her silence meant weakness, proof she didn't belong. They couldn't see the strength underneath, the way her stillness commanded the room without even trying. The crowd got louder as more people arrived. A former investor, Gerald Hayes, in his pinstripe suit, muttered to his wife, "Logan always had random people hanging around. This one has no business being here." His wife, covered in emeralds, nodded, her eyes scanning Ivy's outfit with disgust. "No class at all?" she said, not bothering to lower her voice. "She's embarrassing the family just by standing there." A distant cousin named Trevor, wearing a velvet blazer, called out, Hey, sweetheart, kitchen's that way. He pointed toward a side door, grinning as his friend slapped him on the back. A woman in pearls, Lillian, shook her head disapprovingly. Honestly, someone should escort her out before the lawyer arrives. It's disrespectful to Logan's memory. Marissa, her crimson dress swishing with each step, walked directly toward Ivy, her heels clicking like a countdown. She stopped inches away, deliberately invading Ivy's space, her expensive perfume overwhelming. "You're in the wrong place, darling," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. She reached out and flicked Ivy's cardigan like it was garbage, her long nails deliberately grazing the fabric. "This isn't a homeless shelter. Why don't you leave before you embarrass yourself even more?" Everyone watched. Some smirked, others whispered, but nobody stepped in to help. Ivy's hand stayed steady on her bag, but the violation of her personal space felt deliberate, threatening. Marissa's closeness was calculated intimidation. A cousin nearby muttered, "She's got some nerve staying here." The room's approval of Marissa's aggression was obvious. Their silence made them complicit in Ivy's humiliation. Ivy didn't move. Her eyes briefly flicked to the security camera in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. She knew it was recording, feeding to a private server only 2 people could access. One was her, the other wasn't there, not yet. As the lawyer prepared to begin, Trevor slipped behind Ivy, his velvet blazer brushing the wall. He whispered to his friends, "Watch this." He grabbed a cocktail napkin from a nearby table, scribbled charity case in Sharpie, and tucked it into the strap of Ivy's bag when she wasn't looking. The room noticed immediately. Snickers spread like wildfire as people pointed at the note, its bold letters like a brand on Ivy's back. Clara snapped another photo, barely containing her laughter, while Elise whispered, "She's a walking joke now." Ivy stood unaware, focused on the lawyer, but the crowd's excitement was electric. Their amusement felt like a knife being twisted. Trevor leaned back, grinning, as Lillian muttered, "Serves her right for showing up like that." The prank wasn't just cruel. It was a spectacle designed to make Ivy look foolish for daring to exist among them. The lawyer, Arthur Grayson, entered at exactly 10 o'clock. His gray suit was crisp, his briefcase heavy with secrets. He was older, maybe mid-60s, with a face that showed decades of handling fortunes and family feuds. The room went quiet as he set his briefcase on the table, opened it, and pulled out a single sealed envelope. No drama, no preamble. He adjusted his glasses and scanned the crowd. His gaze paused on Ivy for just a fraction of a second, long enough to make Preston frown and whisper to Marissa, "What was that about?" Gerald Hayes stood up, his pinstripe suit creasing as he pointed at Ivy. His voice boomed like a judge delivering a verdict. "This woman is a fraud," he declared, his fingers shaking. Logan would never let someone like her anywhere near his estate. "She's here to scam us, plain and simple." The room buzzed with agreement, heads nodding, eyes narrowing at Ivy as if she were a criminal caught in the act. His wife, her emeralds glinting, added, "She probably has a fake ID in that raggedy bag." The accusation hung heavy in the air, turning Ivy into a thief in their minds. Her very presence felt like a crime they couldn't tolerate. Ivy's expression remained steady, but the weight of their judgment pressed down on her. Each word felt like a lash meant to strip away her dignity. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, their outrage becoming a performance. Ivy's silence only fueled their need to destroy her. Grayson cleared his throat. "We're here to read the last will and testament of Logan Alexander Thorne, executed 3 years ago and verified as authentic." Murmurs rippled through the room. 3 years? Logan had disappeared only 6 months ago, his private jet lost over the Pacific. No wreckage, no body, just emptiness that fed headlines and greed. Most people assumed he'd died. Most hoped he had. Preston straightened his tie, his smirk returning. "Let's get to it then. Who gets the keys to the kingdom?" Clara leaned forward, her manicured nails tapping her phone, already planning her victory post. Gerald crossed his arms, muttering about stock options. Lillian clutched her pearls, whispering to Trevor about the summer house in France. Ivy stayed still, her bag now resting at her feet. She watched Grayson's hands as he broke the seal, the crack of wax loud in the quiet room. The crowd leaned in, breathing shallow, eyes hungry. This was it, the moment they dressed for, schemed for, flown across continents for. Logan's empire, tech patents, real estate, a biotech firm worth $90 billion was up for grabs. Or so they thought. Grayson unfolded the paper, his voice steady but deliberate, each word dropping like a stone into still water. I, Logan Alexander Thorne, being of sound mind, declare this my final will. To my family, colleagues, and associates, I leave nothing but this truth. Wealth reveals character, not worth. The room froze. Preston's smile faltered. Clara's phone slipped in her hand. Gerald's jaw tightened, his wife's emerald suddenly feeling heavy. Nothing? Someone whispered. That has to be a mistake. Grayson continued, unfazed. All my assets, company shares, properties, accounts, and intellectual rights are bequeathed to one person, the one who stood by me for no reason other than love, the one who never asked about my net worth, never sought my name for status, my wife, Ivy. A gasp tore through the room, sharp and jagged. Heads whipped around, searching for a face that matched the name. Preston barked a laugh, short and disbelieving. Wife? Logan wasn't married. Marissa's hand flew to her mouth, her crimson nails stark against her pale skin. Clara's eyes narrowed, darting to Elise, who mouthed, What the hell? Gerald stood, his chair scraping the floor. This is absurd. Logan never mentioned a wife. It's a scam. Someone forged this. Lillian clutched Trevor's arm, her voice shrill. She's not even here, is she? Some gold digger we've never met stealing what's ours? Grayson held up a hand, silencing them. The will is legal, signed, and notarized. Supporting documents, marriage certificate, photographs, personal letters, are all available for verification. He reached into his briefcase, pulling out a folder. He opened it, revealing a photograph. Logan, younger, laughing, his arm around Ivy in a simple white dress. They stood outside a courthouse. The date on the back read 7 years ago. The room erupted. Preston slammed his fist on the table. This is insanity. Who is she? Clara stood, her phone forgotten. Where's this Ivy? Show her. Trevor sneered. Probably some con artist hiding in Belize. Marissa's voice cut through, venomous. If she's real, why isn't she here? Too ashamed to show her face? Ivy stepped forward. The movement was quiet, deliberate, like a tide turning. Her flats made no sound, but every eye followed her as she crossed the room. Her cardigan swayed slightly, her linen dress catching the light. She stopped beside Grayson, her posture straight, her face calm. The cloth bag hung from her shoulder, unassuming, just like her. The silence was deafening. Preston's mouth opened, then closed, his gold tie suddenly looking ridiculous. Clara's face flushed, her earlier photo burning in her mind. Gerald sank back into his chair, his wife's emeralds looking dull now. Lillian's pearls seemed to choke her hand frozen mid-gesture. Grayson nodded to Ivy with faint respect in his eyes. Mrs. Thorne, he said, handing her the folder. She took it without trembling, her fingers steady as she opened it, glancing at the photograph. Her lips curved just slightly, as if remembering that day. Then she closed the folder and faced the room. I didn't come here for the money, she said, her voice clear and low, cutting through the fog of their shock. I came to see who you were. Who among you cared for Logan as a person, not as a bank account? Who would mourn him, not his fortune? She paused, her hazel eyes sweeping the crowd, pinning each person without effort. You showed me exactly who you are. Preston found his voice, shaky but defiant. You're saying you're his wife? You? He gestured at her dress, her cardigan, his laugh forced. Logan Thorne married to this? No offense, lady, but you look like you shop at thrift stores. Ivy didn't blink. I do, she said simply. Logan didn't care. He loved me for who I am, not what I wore or owned. Can any of you say the same? Clara snorted, folding her arms. Nice act, but I'm not buying it. If you're his wife, where's the proof? A photo isn't enough. Anyone can fake that. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, emboldening the crowd. Gerald nodded, his voice loud again. She's right. We need more. Witnesses, records, something real. Grayson opened his briefcase again, pulling out a stack of documents. Marriage license dated 7 years ago, signed by both parties and two witnesses, a nurse named Sarah Ellis and a librarian named Michael Reed. Personal letters from Logan to Ivy, handwritten, verified by forensic analysis. Bank records showing joint accounts kept private at Logan's request. He paused, pulling out a small USB drive. And video footage from their wedding. He inserted the drive into a laptop on the table, and a screen on the wall flickered to life. The room held its breath as grainy footage played. Courthouse steps. Logan in a simple suit. Ivy in a white dress. Both laughing as they kissed. Sarah and Michael stood nearby, clapping. The date stamp matched the certificate. The crowd's defiance crumbled. Faces paled, eyes darted to Ivy, who watched the footage with quiet emotion in her gaze. Marissa stood, her voice trembling with rage. This is a setup. You planned this, didn't you? Tricking us into what? Looking bad? You're nobody. Logan would never marry someone like you. Her words stung, but Ivy's expression didn't change. She let Marissa's anger hang in the air, unanswered. Then she spoke, her voice colder now, sharp enough to cut. You're right about one thing. This was planned. Not to trick you, but to test you. To see if any of you cared enough to ask who I was before you mocked me. To see if you'd honor Logan's memory or just fight over his wealth. She stepped closer to the crowd, her presence filling the room. You failed, all of you. Trevor laughed nervously. Test? What is this? Some kind of game show? Come on, you can't be serious. But his voice wavered as Ivy's eyes met his, steady and unyielding. She reached into her bag, pulling out a small remote. Logan isn't dead, she said, each word deliberate. He's alive, and he's been watching you this entire time. She pressed the remote, and a monitor on the wall clicked on. There, in a dimly lit room, sat Logan Thorne. 42, lean, dark hair streaked with gray, his blue eyes sharp as ever. He leaned back in a chair, his expression calm but unyielding, like a judge weighing souls. The camera feed was live, the timestamp ticking in the corner. April 15th, 2025, 10:32 a.m. The room exploded. Gasps, shouts, disbelief. Preston stumbled backward, his tie askew. Clara dropped her phone, the screen cracking on marble. Gerald's wife clutched his arm, whispering, No, it can't be. Lillian's pearl necklace snapped, beads scattering across the floor. Logan's voice came through the monitor, low and resonant. You thought I was gone. You thought this was your chance to carve up my life like a cake. But I've been here, watching, listening, every word, every sneer, every lie. His gaze shifted, as if looking through the camera at Ivy. She warned me you'd show your true colors. She was right. Ivy's lips twitched, not quite a smile. She turned to the crowd, her voice steady. Logan's plane didn't crash. It was staged, a way to step back and see who'd stay loyal and who'd turn. You all rushed here, dressed in your finest, ready to claim what wasn't yours. But this was never about money. It was about truth. The grand hall doors opened and Logan walked in. He was real, solid, his presence like a storm breaking. His suit was simple, no tie, his shoes scuffed from travel. The crowd parted as he crossed the room, their whispers dying, their bravado gone. He stopped beside Ivy, his hand brushing hers, a quiet anchor. She looked up at him, her eyes softening for the first time, and he nodded, a silent understanding between them. He faced the room, his voice carrying without effort. Ivy designed this. The will, the reading, the cameras, all of it. She wanted to know who you were when you thought no one was watching. Who'd respect a stranger, who'd show kindness, who'd care about me, not my bank account. He paused, his eyes sweeping the crowd, pinning each person. Not one of you passed. Logan's eyes locked onto Preston, the man who'd mocked Ivy first. His gold tie now looked like a noose. You called my wife a maid? Logan said, his voice low but lethal, each word carving through the room's stunned silence. You laughed while she stood there alone, letting you show your true self. Did you think I wouldn't see? Preston shrank, his bravado gone, his hands fumbling with his tie as if it could protect him. The crowd watched, frozen, as Logan stepped closer, his presence towering despite his simple suit. "You're not family, Preston. You're a parasite, and I'm done feeding you." A security guard appeared at Preston's side, grip firm. As Preston was led out, his protest drowning in the echo of Logan's words, the room felt lighter. Justice was tangible. Ivy's honor restored with every step of Preston's disgrace. Preston tried to speak. "Logan, come on. We didn't know." She didn't say anything. Logan's gaze snapped to him, cold and final. "She shouldn't have had to. You saw a woman you didn't recognize, and your first instinct was to tear her down. That's not family. That's not loyalty." Clara stepped forward, desperate. "We're sorry, okay? We didn't mean it. Tell her, Logan. Tell her to forgive us." Her eyes darted to Ivy, pleading, but Ivy's face was stone, her silence louder than any accusation. Logan shook his head. "It's not about forgiveness. It's about consequences." He nodded to Grayson, who pulled out another document. "This is an addendum to the will, effective immediately. Anyone who insulted Ivy today, documented in security footage, audio logs, or witness accounts, is cut off. No shares, no properties, no contact. You're done." Grayson began reading names, his voice like a gavel. Preston Thorne, Marissa Thorne, Clara Evans, Gerald Hayes, Lillian Ward, Trevor Lang. Each name landed like a whip. Faces crumpled, protests rose then died as security guards moved in. Preston shouted, "You can't do this, I'm blood." But a guard took his arm, firm but calm, leading him toward the doors. Marissa followed, her crimson dress trailing, her sobs echoing. Clara clutched her cracked phone, whispering, "This can't be happening." As Clara was escorted out, her face drained of all color as Logan turned to her, his gaze cutting like glass. "You turned my wife into a meme," he said, his voice steady but searing, "thinking your followers would cheer you on, but lies don't last, Clara." He nodded to Grayson, who tapped his laptop. Clara's phone buzzed violently in her hand. Her social media accounts, her empire of influence, were collapsing in real time. Posts deleted, followers dropping by thousands, sponsors cutting ties with brutal efficiency. "You're banned from my companies, my properties, my life," Logan said as a guard took her arm. Her cracked phone slipped to the floor. The crowd gasped, a chorus of awe. The room was electric with the thrill of justice. Ivy stood beside Logan, her silence like a crown as Clara's digital throne crumbled. Her cruelty to Ivy had become her undoing. Gerald's wife tried to argue, her emeralds flashing, but Logan cut her off. "You called my wife classless. You don't get to stay." They left, heads bowed, the crowd thinning as guards cleared the room. Lillian's scattered pearls crunched underfoot, a fitting end to her pride. When the doors closed, only a handful remained. 3 people who'd stayed silent, who hadn't laughed or sneered. Sarah Ellis, the nurse from the wedding video, now older, her eyes wet with relief. Michael Reed, the librarian who'd nodded to Ivy when she entered, recognizing her quietly. And Anna, a groundskeeper who'd offered Ivy water before the reading, no questions asked. Logan turned to them, his voice softer now. "You saw her. You didn't judge. That's what family means." He looked at Ivy, his hand finding hers again. "You were right about everything." Ivy's gaze lingered on the empty chairs, the spilled champagne, the broken pearls. "I didn't want to be right," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I wanted them to be better." She faced the 3 who remained, her eyes warm now. "Thank you for seeing me." Logan squeezed her hand, his voice low for her alone. "You're more than they'll ever understand." She smiled, small but real, and leaned into him, her cardigan brushing his sleeve. The room was quiet now, the vultures gone, the truth laid bare. Ivy didn't need the money, the estate, the empire. She'd never wanted it. She'd wanted Logan alive, whole, hers. And now, with the world stripped down to its bones, they stood together, unshaken. The hills outside glowed green under the April sky, and the cameras blinked off, their work done.